Welcome back to Nowhere Fast Garage. Today I'm in the garage with the 84 Camaro Z28 and checking out the transmission fluid leak. It's not a big leak, but I do notice every time you start the car and pull it out of the driveway, it'll leave a drop of, like a quarter-sized drop of transmission oil every 8 or 10 feet. And then it seems to slow down, and then when you shut the car off, it doesn't really drip, which is usually the opposite of, that's the opposite of what I usually see with transmission oil leaks. Usually they leak after the car's off and been sitting, but I finally got to go under here. I'll show you what I found. I don't think it's going to be very difficult to fix, but you know how that goes. So it's pretty wet everywhere, all around the bottom of the transmission. I did see by this manual shift shaft, let me see, right here. This is what controls what gear you're in: park, reverse, neutral, drive, and it does seem it's a little damp up there, but I'm not really sure. I think what I'm gonna have to do is run the car and see if I can see anything dripping while it's running. I did take off this cover. This torque converter has a plastic cover, 4 screws. It comes off. And luckily it looks dry. So I was worried it might have been the front transmission seal, which is a pain because you have to take the transmission out and the torque converter out to get to that seal. I don't see anything on the front pump of the transmission that looks like it's dripping. So it's kind of all around the pan. So I'm thinking, you know, possibly this shifter seal, but it might just be the pan gasket. Or who knows, these transmission pan bolts might even be loose and they just need to be torqued. So I guess I'll check that first. But better than I had hoped. I had just feared it would be that front seal. The rear seal also looks okay. And the speedometer connection, you know, it looks, you know, like it's covered in oil, but it's probably just blowing back from up here. This is where it's really the wettest that I can see, is right here. So that's why I'm thinking this shift shaft seal up in here. It's a little bit tight to get in there, but it's probably doable. I went back under and checked all the pan bolts, and they seem pretty tight, except, which is pretty annoying here, you really can't get to the bolts on the rear side of the pan because this cross member is blocking access, which is kind of crazy. But I guess you have to take the cross member out, or maybe undo the transmission mount and jack the back of the transmission up. I don't know. Seems weird, but that's how they have it. shifter through the gears. See what happens. Directly on the shift seal. The other thing I'm going to address today is the TV cable that goes to the transmission, the throttle valve cable. And the way it was set up here when I got the car, as it is here, they've got, this looks like the original bracket that was from the Quadrajet. And this is the throttle, and this is the TV cable to the transmission. And putting it on there is not giving it the proper travel, the proper geometry. So they sell these little brackets that you can add on. You connect the cable to that post, which is supposed to give it the proper travel. So I'm going to see if this is going to work on here. This is a Holley 1850 600 CFM, I think, or 650. I forget. I also picked up this throttle stud kit because what they had on there was a screw, which, is not really the right way to do it. So the issue now is, of course, this hole is not big enough for this to fit over this throttle stud. Why would it be? So I'm going to have to drill that out a little bit. It was just easy fix with the Unibit, and now it works. But it's just a reminder of, I haven't been doing much with aftermarket stuff in a long time. Just a reminder that whenever you get into the aftermarket world, nothing is truly bolt-on. There's always little modifications that need to be done, and it's just part of the deal. Okay, so now I've got the bracket on, I've got the TV cable in its correct position, hopefully, and the throttle. It's got the proper stud, but I am going to have to drive the car and see if how the shift points are, see if any adjustments are needed. Trans fluid is kind of dark, and not knowing the history on it, I'm not going to risk putting fresh fluid in. So let's see. It smells okay. Not the worst. So I got a new bin here to catch the fluid. I'm going to try to drain it and hopefully reuse it. See how it looks once I get it down. everything, which is a good sign, but this fluid is spent. It's pretty dirty, lots of clutch material, sediment, but I'm just putting it back in. I know there's all kinds of theories about putting new transmission fluid in old transmissions. I don't know the history on this. I don't know if it's ever been serviced before. So personally, 2 times in the past I've put new fluid in an old transmission with no history of service records, no service history, and they started slipping. And then people will say, well, you know, if it does that, it means there was something wrong with it in the first place. And that's probably true, but I just don't feel like paying for a complete rebuild on this transmission right now if I don't have to, if I can get another year or 2 or who knows how long out of it. So I'm gonna pour it right back in through a screen, through a mesh, to catch any chunks, but otherwise it's gonna go back in as is. I just gotta clean up this pan, clean up the bottom of the transmission. This gasket is pretty much cooked on here. Some spots I'm gonna have to scrape. An issue that I seem to run into more and more, especially as these cars get older, not getting the right parts. This is supposed to be the filter for this 700 R4, and I looked it up and it is listed as fitting this car and a lot of other cars, but you can see the filler, the connecting tube is at a pretty good angle. When I pull the filter down that's in the car, it's at an angle and then it turns and it goes straight up. So when I'm trying to put this filter on, it's not fitting all the way, and even if it did, it's hanging down at an angle rather than flat up underneath the valve body. So this was a waste. I could have just bought a gasket, but I bought the whole kit thinking, well, if I'm not going to change the fluid, I'll change the filter at least. The other thing was, when I pulled the other filter out, there was 2 O-rings on the neck, and I don't believe that's correct. It should only be 1. So I put it back with 1. But even the shape of the filter is completely different than what's in here. I think they just combine a bunch of parts into one application, into one bunch of different parts into one. You can see this has like an angle to it, and it's narrower, it's not as wide. And like I was saying, that filler neck, like I was saying, that connecting tube pretty much goes straight up. But I've got the gasket surface cleaned. There was a lot of stuck little bits of gasket, so I've got that cleaned up pretty good. Got the pan cleaned up nice, and the bolts. So I'm going to start putting everything back together now. This is why I could never be paid to be a mechanic, because I'm just too damn slow. It's like all day trying to get this back together. One of the trans pan bolts were missing, so I went down to the hardware store, and it's a metric 8 1.25 course, I believe it was. So we can replace the missing one. Pan is all torqued down. I don't know the exact torque figures for these screws, but I did find something that I had that said oil pan bolts 88 inch-pounds. So I did the same for this on the inch-pound torque wrench. Hopefully that's enough. And this some operation I've got here. I poured the fluid from the bin into a bucket, and then the bucket is going to go through a piece of window screen to catch any larger chunks, and that's how it's getting back into the transmission. Definitely caught some stuff in the screen. So next morning, cleaned everything up, put the fluid back in, saw that part already. Had the car parked out in the driveway overnight, and so far no drips. Everything's looking dry. This looks like it was the pan gasket. I mean, as you can see, once I removed the pan, that the gasket was just pretty much cooked on there. I don't know if it was original or not, but it wasn't soft, it wasn't rubbery anymore. It was just dried, hard, cracked, brittle. So I think that was it. And now I've just got to adjust the TV cable. I drove down the street last night and it was shifting into second really late, so I pulled the adjuster. Wow, this is like totally loose. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be clipped in there. Okay. I did pull the adjustment out one notch. There's like the metal tab on the side of the cable, and then you push that in and you can move the adjustment in or out. So I pulled it one click out. You can see how that goes. Still way too late. I got that adjuster pulled out probably an inch or more. Something's just not right. The idle is hanging up very high. It's just, it's not good. Not good at all. Still shifting very late. I think what's happening is I'm using the original Quadrajet throttle and TV cable bracket with the new relocation adapter on the Holley carburetor, and I'm guessing it's just not right. The distance is just not right. It's pretty bad. So I'm gonna have to look into getting another throttle cable bracket, I guess. Not good at all. Either that or I totally screwed up the transmission when I dropped the oil and put it back, so who knows. Why the idle is so high, I really don't get it. Ugh. Everything I do turns into a catastrophe. I put a screw in this bracket just to hold the cable from moving all around like it was before. I think it's broken. I don't know how that happened. I don't remember it being like that before, and I didn't really touch the adjustment part until today, and it was already loose. Took the relocation bracket off and set it back up the way it was before I touched anything, so I'm gonna see how that works out. Then I guess I'll know for sure if I really screwed something up or not. used to be. So that's a bit of relief. Very big relief, actually. Maybe shifting a little early even now. Much better. I'm gonna have to look into that whole bracket relocation thing. I'm sure I'm doing it wrong. It's been a long time since I messed around with it. You know, with a 700 transmission like this, I don't know. Had a nice 2.3 flare going there, which I don't remember from before. Great. After driving it around a few minutes, it seems better. It's still not totally right. It's shifting a little early, a little soft. I really feel like the adjustment is still not quite right. So I'm gonna have to check into this throttle bracket situation. Hoping if I get the adjustment correct, it'll actually shift correctly.